If you need immediate help, please call the National Substance Abuse and Mental Health Hotline at 1-800-662-HELP.
Bottle of wine, fruit of the vine. When you gonna let me get sober? Let me go home and start over.
Welcome to Clean and Sober Radio, brought to you in part by Jefferson University Hospitals and Thomas Jefferson University, providing excellent clinical and compassionate care in the Philadelphia region, a proven leader in healthcare and education since 1825. And now, here are your hosts, Gary Hendler and Mark Sigmund.
Hey, hi, everybody, and thanks for joining us at Clean and Sober Radio out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Clean and Sober Radio features real people with real stories about addiction to drugs and alcohol. Mark Sigmund, what is new this week in recovery news?
Americans are changing what they're drinking. They're still cracking open cold ones, but what's inside their cans is different. More people are now reaching for cannabis beverages, non-alcoholic drink infused with THC, or them with hemp that makes you feel high. Consumer demand for cannabis beverage has hit a huge peak right now. And what they're finding, according to a July Gallup survey, the percentage of U.S. adults who say they consume alcohol fell to 54%, which is the lowest level since 1939.
Well, you're saying that because this drink now, you can drink ganja, people are not drinking alcohol as much? I don't believe it.
That's exactly what's going on. Basically, THC beverage sales in the U.S. are expected to grow from 1.1 billion last year to nearly 5.6 billion by 2035. Yes, that more people and you know, again, more people are going for non-alcoholic beverages too. Yeah. And you're seeing this huge push, especially in the younger generations, where they're saying, well, I'm going to get this instead of alcohol.
Well, you know what, Mark?
You know,
it seems like it's so much easier to drink marijuana than to go through the whole ritual, unless you like that ritual, rolling the doobie and all that stuff. It's easier.
Yeah, there's no bongs. Yeah. There's no, gravity bongs. There's none of that stuff. And you know what? I got to tell you, as an addictions counselor, I would take that any day of the week over alcohol.
Well, look, I'm going to tell you something right now. If they would have had a Quaalude drink
back in the day
with a little bit of ice, I would love that.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't imagine this in college because I probably would have never really drank alcohol in college if they had these things available.
Course. What else you got?
So this is kind of really scary. What they're finding is that a deadly drug mix has led to a staggering rise in overdose deaths among seniors. And what they're finding is basically fentanyl-related deaths increased from only 264 to 4,144 in older adults between 2015 and 2023, a 1,470% increase. What they're finding is older adults are using fentanyl. They're also using stimulants. Their bodies aren't as well equipped. This is 65 and older. And,
Mark, easy. Okay.
Yes.
Easy.
Since the late 90s, they literally have a 4,000% increase in overdose deaths.
All right, geriatric addiction, I get it. Where are they getting fentanyl?
That's a great question. That's a great question. I think they're talking about people that get it off the streets, or maybe they get the fentanyl patches for pain.
Maybe.
There's people, I don't even want to get into it because I don't want to give people ideas.
Yeah.
But also just prescription drugs that they're getting. And you know what the message is?
What?
If you have elderly that keep an eye on them, keep an eye on their prescriptions, because not only do they die sometimes from overdoses, but you see them break hips from falls and all that. So it's a whole new ball game with the older adults.
Good. All right, listen, we're ready to start the show. We got a great show today. And before we take our first break, our guest, his life reads like a Hollywood script, Mark. Anthony Ruggiano Jr. has transformed from a dark past intertwined with organized crime to a beacon of hope for those of us who are suffering from addiction. And he'll be on right now. He's coming on after the break. He's at a rehab. He works at a rehab. He's not in rehab. He's long-term sobriety. And he's with Erica. And when we come back, we're going to hear his whole life story. Awesome.
This is Clean and Sober Radio.
A cancer diagnosis can knock the wind out of you. The Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center at Abington Jefferson Health can help. Our brand new Asplund Cancer Pavilion brings you 86,000 square feet of cancer-fighting science for truly comprehensive care. Backed by the strength of an NCI-designated cancer center. Call 1-800-JEFF now. The Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center at Abington Jefferson Health. The power to out-science cancer.
Hey man, this is Ricky Bird, former member of Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, an inductee to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as of 2015, and I listen to Clean and Sober Radio, and so do my friends here, right?
610-632-8601. This is Clean and Sober Radio.
And you can all enjoy Clean and Sober Radio almost any time on these great stations. WWDB, AM 860 in Philadelphia, WPEN 97.5 FM, High Def 2 in Philly, WGAC, Augusta, Georgia, WJBR, Tampa, Florida, and a host of other radio stations. Well, hey, we're back. We're back.
We're back.
Anthony, welcome to Clean and Sober Radio.
Hey, Anthony.
Hey, thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hey,
I'm with my coworker Erica too. Let us say hello.
Yeah.
Hello, Erica.
Hello, how are you guys?
Erica, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
Good. So you guys are in Florida right now. You both work at a rehab. You can plug the name if you want.
Yeah, I'm going to let Erica do that, and then you and I could get into it. How's that?
That sounds good to me. Anthony, I'm not going to argue with you, man. All right?
All right.
All right.
Go ahead, Erica.
Erica.
Tell them.
Yeah, so my name's Erica Roman. I'm the Director of Admissions and Marketing for Gulf Ocean Rehab Center. We're located in Lauderdale by the Sea, Florida.
Okay.
We do PHP, IOP. We treat primary mental health as well as primary substance use, 18 and older. And if anyone needs any help, our direct cell phone number is 1-844-468-1345. They can call that number and speak to me directly, and I'll do whatever I can to help them.
Well, that's very sweet of you because we do broadcast, out of Tampa, but we reach all over the place. So that's a good resource to know about it. I just want to make a mention of this. If you're just listening to the show, anybody across the earth, I guess, and you want to watch Mark and I do the show right now, go to Facebook. Go to our Facebook page, Clean and Sober Radio, right now, and you can see us, what we look like. I'm here. Mark's here. Brad is here, our camera and technical guy. And it's more fun to watch us do it than just listening. So that's the story, okay?
All right.
All right. Anthony.
Yes.
Welcome to the show, man. I really appreciate you coming on, you have an incredible story. And I want to get into it. And you said there's nothing off the table, but Mark and I are only here to give information, and we're going to have fun doing it. No tricks, no nothing. Your story is incredible. And you know what? I think that you are the poster boy example of how we, no matter what we did in the past, can get clean and sober and live a decent life. I applaud you for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
All right. So where'd you grow up, Anthony?
Well, I was born in East New York, Brooklyn, and then when I was about 5 years old, my family moved across the border into Ozone Park, Queens. So I basically grew up in Ozone Park, Queens, and I stood there most of my adult life until I absolutely left New York. So I was born in the 50s, and my father, as we all know, was a member of the Gambino crime family.
Yes. Your dad, his name was what, Fat Andy?
Yeah, that was his nickname. His nickname was Anthony Fat Andy Ruggiano.
Was he a big, I guess he was a big guy, right?
Well, he grew into that nickname. He wasn't, when I was a kid, he was kind of thin. Then he became a little heavier. But it's funny because I was actually born into that life because he became a made member the same year I was born. So I was always lucky that way,
Yeah, I read something about. I just want to read a little clip here, and I think it's interesting and it's sad when I read it. At age 13, you found out who your father really was from older men in the Ozone Park neighborhood where you were. He was the first to find out. You were the first to find out before your younger siblings. You have a brother and a sister. But before that, you noticed there was something different about your father, even when he didn't know even though you didn't know what exactly was. And, you wrote down, it was interesting that your dad would work, different days and maybe your friends' other fathers of the week. There would always be people in your house. And this really struck me. You never had to wait for tables when you went into a restaurant.
Yeah.
Right?
It's funny. Right.
Yeah.
So, when I was a kid, I knew things were different, but I didn't actually know what. But I knew things were different. I knew when my father walked into a room, the atmosphere changed, and he got treated very different. Like when we went out to restaurants and there was people waiting for tables, we would go right in and sit right down. The owner would always come and sit with us. The chef would come out of the kitchen.
Yeah.
And then I would go back to the same restaurant with like my friends, even with my cousins sometimes and my aunts and uncles, and we would have to wait for tables at the same restaurant. So and I always knew things were different, but I didn't know what. And even in school, like, when you go to school and they ask you like what your father does for a living day, so in that, I would ask my father, they want to know what you do for a living. He would tell me he worked in the dry cleaners, and I knew as a young child that wasn't true, but I went with it anyway. And I would go to school and say that my father worked in the dry cleaners, and I found out later on in life the reason why he told me that was because he had this fella that was with him that actually owned five dry cleaning places, and my father was on the books there for like income tax purposes. So I knew things were different. I didn't know what. And then when I was 13, 12 or 13 in New York at the time, you would drift off your block. You hung out on your block when you were a kid. And then I drifted off into the neighborhood, and I started hanging out by this pizzeria on 101st Avenue. And when I got to the corner, the older guys there would like point me out, and I would hear them whispering saying, "That's Fat Andy's son." And that's when I started learning about the mob. And my father was a made guy, and what kind of person he was in the street. And then once my father found out that I knew the basics, but actually he started taking me around because there was a lot of social clubs in my neighborhood at the time. He started introducing me to all the other wise guys in Ozone Park. And that's actually when I first actually was introduced to John Gotti.
Can I tell you something?
Like
Your story, did you ever see the movie Bronx Tale?
Sure.
It reminds me of that. That kid, that you were enamored by this life at a certain point. You wanted to be part of it. And you probably knew in the back of your head it wasn't right. I mean, I'm sure not all your friends' fathers were made men.
No, my friends' fathers were all legitimate. Even my uncles. My father actually was the only guy, well, not really. His brother Frank, my uncle Frank, was like, he had a legitimate job, but he was like a Shylock and a bookmaker. But my father was the only guy in the mob that was in his family. And my friends in the neighborhood, no, their fathers were all legitimate guys. Later on, when I got older, I met other wise guys' sons, and I started hanging out with them. But also, back then, it was the 60s. So when I started hanging out by this pizzeria, and I found that I was Fat Andy's son, then I started getting treated different, and I started getting treated better, and I started liking it.
Oh yeah.
And then of course I started smoking weed, and then I was 16. They started taking me to bars, and I was allowed to drink because I was Fat Andy's son, and I was comfortable in a bar because my father always owned bars. So I actually grew up in a bar, so I was comfortable with a drink in my hand, and I got caught up into this lifestyle that I loved.
Listen, if you're just joining us now, we're having a great conversation with an ex-soldier in the Gambino family, Anthony Ruggiano. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And
Good job.
This is a good interview. So again, give us a call. If you want to speak with him directly, this is an opportunity to speak to a guy that lived real hard on the streets, and I mean real hard, and now he is in recovery, and that's so important. Give us a call at 610-632-8601. That's 610-632-8601, and that's right into the studio. So okay, Anthony, I get it. Look, Mark and I, we doing this show for a long time. We're in long-term recovery, like you are. Mark was arrested once, I think, for jaywalking.
DUI.
DUI. I mean, I got arrested. I got locked up everywhere around Philadelphia. So, and I grew up in the music business, so I understand what you're saying in a different way. That you were enamored. I was enamored by hanging around with these famous people and seeing the cars they drove and all this other stuff, and it leads you into a life of crime.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what happened. So when I was 16, I got suspended from school because now I know I'm Fat Andy's son. I'm, playing hooky from school. I'm not going to school. I'm smoking weed. Now I'm hanging out with girls. And I'm running around Ozone Park, and I get thrown out of school at 16. And then, I want to go to work for my father, and my father sits me down, and I tell him, I want to work for you. And he tells me, well, if I work for him, going to jail was all part of the job, and that was fine with me, after how I was raised. And then I went to work for him, just like in the movies. I was selling cigarettes. I was working in dice games and poker games and blackjack games. I'm hanging out in bars. I'm making money. Now I'm making crazy money. And, you were in the music business. Now my father, he gets hooked up with you probably heard of them, Jay and the Americans.
Of course, Jay Black and the Americans, right?
Right. So he, my father gets introduced to him through my cousin, and I meet him, and he brings Frankie Valli to my house. So now I'm hanging out with these famous people. And what happened was, when I was 19, now I'm working in dice games and all this craziness. And I go to Puerto Rico with Jay. Jay was doing some shows in Puerto Rico with his group, and I'm in Puerto Rico. And so before the concerts, before the shows, Jay would have a big suite, and he would sing opera to warm up his voice. And people would be up there smoking weed and drinking, and, of course, there was all groupies up there, and, a lot of crazy shit going on up there. And then one night I went up there to see what was going on, and I walked up to a table, and they had this white powder on the table. And one of the guys says to me, I said to one of the guys, "What is that?" And he said it was cocaine. And he asked me if I wanted some, and I said, "Yeah." And, that was
it, right?
I didn't know that was the beginning of the end, but it was the beginning of, I started using that substance at 19. I didn't put it down till I was 35.
Anthony, don't you think that the lifestyle you led before the drugs was intoxicating in itself?
Oh, without a doubt, I loved it. I was addicted to it.
Right?
Without a doubt, yeah. Sure, listen, I'm going to the Copacabana. I'm getting in all these clubs. I'm hanging out. I'm hanging out with I'm going to Madison Square Garden in a limousine with Frankie Valli, doing sold out shows at the Garden.
Pretty cool.
It was great. That's when it was really good. And then as we all know, then it becomes really bad. But that was in the beginning. It was amazing.
So Anthony, where was your mother in all this?
Well, my mother was, she was from the neighborhood. She was from Brooklyn. She was just home. She was sort of in denial, my mother. You know what I mean? Like she knew, but she didn't know. My father was a womanizer. And there was no abuse going on in my house, but the marriage wasn't. It was a mob marriage. Listen, I don't know a mob guy that didn't have a girlfriend. You know what I mean? A wife, and that was just the way we lived.
Is that word called a kumar?
A gumahara, yeah, we all had gumahara.
Yeah,
Some of us had more than one.
Yeah. Well, guess what? You didn't have to be in the mob to have that either.
No, of course not. But it was more accepted. I think it was like just. Yeah. It was just a natural thing. I don't know. It was just everybody did it.
Yeah.
Everybody did it. So the lifestyle was very intoxicating. I'm making a lot of money. I'm getting in the Copacabana. I'm Fat Andy's son. I'm hanging out now. Now I'm hanging out in Manhattan on Mulberry Street. I'm hanging out with Buddy, Neil Della Croce's son. He was the underboss of the Gambino family. I get married. Paul Castellano's at my wedding.
Wow.
It was a crazy life.
Well, I can feel Mark, you and I are like smiling. Listen to Anthony. I can feel that whole thing. There was absolutely no judgment from Mark or myself, Anthony. I'll tell you that.
And you know, I got to ask you, Anthony, I'm really curious about it because I've seen it in so many movies. Did you become a made member of the Gambino family?
So what happened was I was proposed to be made. So what that means is when you get proposed, they actually write your name on a piece of paper, and they pass it around to the other families to make sure there was no beefs around and make sure you were Italian and all that. And so I was proposed once, and believe it or not, I was proposed twice. I was proposed once, and my name went around, and I was waiting to have the ceremony, and I got arrested, and I went to prison. That was in 91. When I got out of prison, I got proposed again in 96, and I went to prison again. It's crazy how this happened. I think it was divine intervention. And then I got out in 04, wow. And then I got sent for in 04 by a captain in the Gambino family, and they told me that my name got passed around. They gave me permission to go on sit-downs, and they just were waiting to have the ceremony, and then I got arrested again, and then that was the end of the life for me. But yeah, so I was actually a proposed member, but I never officially had the ceremony.
So to be a proposed member, a made man, you have to have Italian on both sides, mom and dad, correct?
Well, that's how it used to be. Now the rules, they bend them a little. Yeah. Your mother could be like of a different nationality or half of a different nationality, but your father has to be Italian.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Well, back when I was younger, you had to be all Italian.
Yeah, let me ask you a question then. I'm Jewish. Could I be a made man?
No.
Oh, yeah,
but you know what? But listen, back in the day,
yeah,
the Jewish mob had a ceremony too.
That was Meyer Lansky, wasn't it?
Yes. When I started hanging out in the street with my father, on Friday nights, he would hold court in this bar in Brooklyn in the 70s. Yeah. And a lot of guys would come there, and this crew of Jew, and always the guys from Bronzeville, going back to Murders Incorporated, they always serviced the Jewish mob, my father's neighborhood. So when my father, in the 70s, he actually serviced the Jewish mob for the Gambinos, and these old Jewish guys would come on Friday nights, and they would have these suits on, and you know, them old-time fedora hats.
Yeah, sure, sure.
And he would tell me they were Jewish wise guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Jews were always entwined with the Italians. You know that.
Always. So, okay, so where'd you do your time the first two times you went to prison? Where'd you go?
So the first time I went to prison was in 1978. I got a 5-year sentence with New York State, and I was in a couple of different prisons. I was in Dannemora, I was in Comstock, I was in Elmira, I was in Hut to Kill. I was all over the place. I did 2.5 years. When I got, you want to talk about addiction. So when I got out, I went to jail in 78. When I got out in 80, that's when I started hanging out at this club called the Ritz in Manhattan. It was a rock club in downtown Manhattan. Yeah. And I started doing a lot of blow there. And that's when I was hanging out with, you want to talk about celebrities, I was hanging out in there. Like one night, my father walked in there to see me, and I was sitting at a table with Andy Warhol.
Whoa.
You know, I got, like, you want to talk about celebrities, I got high with David Bowie, with Keith Richards. I mean, Keith Richards used to call my house up looking for my brother. And my mother used to tell me, who's this English guy that keeps calling here looking for your brother? It was Keith Richards.
Wow.
So now, so I'm caught up in all this lifestyle. But what happened was I started freebasing.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I started freebasing, and that's when things got crazy. And in the interim, my father got arrested, and he got 40 years with the feds. And it really got bad then. It got really bad, violent.
Yeah.
A lot of bad shit. And then I got clean. Then I went to a treatment center in 88, and I got clean. And then I got arrested again, and I got out of treatment. I got arrested again in 90, and I went to jail again in 91. I got a 1 1/3 to 4 for bookmaking, which is legal now because the government does it. I went to jail for bookmaking.
Right.
I did 16 months. I got out in 92, and I was clean. I started making crazy money again, big time, crazy money in the mob. And then I got arrested again in 95 for bookmaking again, and I got a 2 to 4.
All right, hold that thought. Hold that 95 charge. We're going to break for a commercial. We're talking with Anthony Ruggiano Jr. and we do not go away. There's much more of this guy's story. We'll be right back.
This is Clean and Sober Radio.
A cancer diagnosis can knock the wind out of you. The Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center at Abington Jefferson Health can help. Our brand new Asplund Cancer Pavilion brings you 86,000 square feet of cancer-fighting science for truly comprehensive care. Backed by the strength of an NCI-designated cancer center. Call 1-800-JEFF now. The Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center at Abington Jefferson Health. The power to out-science cancer.
Hi, this is Randy the Blaze Lurch. I listen to Clean and Sober Radio.
610-632-8601. This is Clean and Sober Radio.
We're back with Anthony Ruggiano Jr., a life of crime, Gambino family, major soldier, almost a made man, and now he is back in recovery. And I just want to mention again, if you're just listening to us and you want to watch us, go to Facebook, go to our page, Clean and Sober Radio, and you'll see us right now doing the show just like these folks. Judge Christopher Maddox is watching us from Drexel Hill, Pennsylvania. Eddie Kilgore, Kathy Wolf Collin, Mike Burke, Media, Pennsylvania. James Bilderback, good afternoon. Looking forward to the topic and your guest. Jim, we know you're having a good time listening to this. Debbie Reynolds, MacGyver T. Good afternoon, family. That's C. Ruger.
It's C. Ruger.
That's his stage name. Lou Montana. Great show, everyone. Have a good weekend. Mimi Dorshu. A question for you, Anthony. Did your dad use drugs, or was it alcohol for him? Barry. Oh, your brother's watching. Barry Rich is watching from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. All right, we got so many people watching, Anthony, because of you. What about that question from Mimi Dorshu? Was your dad involved in drugs?
No, my father was a very, very heavy drinker. I would say my father was a borderline alcoholic, but we hung out. His office was a bar. He owned bars my whole life. He always owned the bar.
Right.
Always, my whole entire life till he died, he owned the bar. So he was a very heavy drinker, my father, but they all drank. I mean, him and his partner, Tony Lee, drank every day.
Mm-hmm.
He was a very heavy drinker. Drugs, I mean, I doubt if he did drugs, but he definitely was a heavy drinker.
Did he know you did drugs? And did you sell drugs?
That's a good question. So my brother had a major marijuana business back in the day. Me, I dibbled and dabbed with drugs. My father didn't sell drugs because you got to understand, the mob, the rule was you couldn't sell drugs, but we all know a lot of guys sold drugs on the down low.
Right.
But my father was an old school wise guy, and he believed in the rules.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to tell my father all the time, why aren't we selling, drugs? Everybody's getting rich but us. He goes, because I'll be the one they make an example out of and they kill. So he never really got involved in selling drugs, but he was making big money in other areas. He really didn't need to sell drugs. But he was a very, very heavy drinker. Now, my brother, on the other hand, my brother was way ahead of his time. My brother had a major marijuana business back in the 70s and 80s. He made a lot of money. My kid brother selling marijuana.
What about your sister in all this?
My sister, unfortunately, the three of us grew up to become addicts. I mean,
okay.
My brother passed away not too long ago.
Sorry.
My sister, she's clean now. She's doing good, much better.
Good.
Me, my father knew I was using. I mean, it was no secret. I mean, everybody knew I was using. I was taking money off everybody, when I was in the grips, but when I got clean, people were glad I got clean. Even like John Gotti was the boss of the Gambino family.
Yeah.
When I got clean, I got out of treatment on a Wednesday night.
Right.
I went to treatment in Vermont. I got out of treatment on a Wednesday night. That Saturday, I went to the Bergen Hunt Fish Club to see John, and he went outside. Him and I went outside, and he asked me how I was doing. I said, I'm doing good. And I remember he looked at me, and he goes, do you think you have it beat? And I says, well, I'm not going to get high today. I gave him the just for today.
Yeah, right.
So he said to me, well, is there anything I could do for you? I don't want you to get stressed out. And I didn't have a car at the time. And I go, well, I'm just trying to get some money together. I need a car. He goes, what, you don't have a car? I said, no. So he went inside his office and he made a call and he came out and he said, okay, listen, go to 84th Street and Atlantic Avenue and there's a car lot there and just go in there and tell the guy in there that I sent you. So I went to the car lot and I walked in and I saw this guy and I said, John sent me. And the guy told me, take whatever car you want.
That's awesome.
So I took a car. So now I'm looking for a Cadillac. You know what I mean? So now, but I couldn't find a Cadillac because he had none. But he had this beautiful white Bonneville. So back in the day, Bonnevilles were like really nice cars.
Yeah.
So I took the Bonneville and I drove back to the club and I showed John the car, and he gave me $2,000. And he says to me, "Here's $2,000. I want you to come back here every Saturday with $100 and don't disappoint me." So I said, all right. So I went back one Saturday, I gave him 100. I went back the second Saturday, I gave him 100. The third Saturday, I went back. He asked me how much I owed him, and I said, I owe you $1,700. Now I'm looking good. I'm clean a couple of months. I'm feeling good. I'm looking good. I'm back in the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He says to me, okay, listen, keep the rest as a gift. So, people were glad I got clean, because in reality, I mean, the things I was doing, if I wasn't Fat Andy's son, and if this guy, John Guy, didn't like me, I would have got killed.
Of course.
I mean, they would have definitely clipped me. Because when I went to treatment, my father had a partner, Tony Lee, and I had no money and no insurance. So he came to my house, and I told him I needed to go to treatment. And he said, okay, I'm going to pay for this, but as far as I'm concerned, you're too far gone. But something has to happen because you're on the verge of getting shot in the head. He told me, and he sent me to treatment, and he paid for it.
Wow!
And here I am.
Now I
am working in the treatment center with Erica.
Listen, we can recover, can't we? You've been sober for how many? You're close to 40 years now. 38. How many?
Well, no, I'm coming up on 37 years. January 12th, I'll have 37 years.
When you think about that, Anthony, Mark and I talk about it a lot. You remember you couldn't get one day clean?
Yeah. Definitely. I'm sitting here. It's funny because Erica's shaking her head. She has 8 years. What do you have, 8 years? Yeah, so she's shaking. It's funny how us addicts and alcoholics can relate, right?
Absolutely. Listen, it's a common bond anywhere in the world. Now, what do you guys, I know what Erica does. She told us. Anthony, what do you do with the rehab?
Well, right now, I'm a behavioral health technician. I used to be a counselor. When I first got into the treatment business, it's funny how I got into the business because, getting back to the prison cells. So when I went away in 95, I went away in 96. And while I was away in 96 doing the 2 to 4, I got indicted by the feds in Florida and I got another 10 years. So when I wound up doing 8 years and 3 months. When I got out in 2004, I went back into the mob. And then about a year later, I got arrested again for something that happened in the 80s.
Right.
Right. And then when I decided to get out of that life and I went, I decided to cooperate and they took me out of New York. And then when the feds were dumping me, I had no skills. You got to understand, I was a criminal from when I was 16 years old.
Right.
I never had a legitimate job my whole life.
Right.
Now I'm 60 years old. I'm 60 years old and I'm living in Michigan and I have no skills. I don't know how to fix anything, build anything. I had no Social Security. I had no 401k. I had nothing.
Right.
The government was ready to stop giving me money because they were done with me. They were done. So that stipend was going to stop. And then that is, you want to talk about God or whatever, divine intervention or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in my kitchen one day, and the phone rings and it's this guy, Steve, who used to be my sponsor from New York. He's the only guy that knew where I was outside of my family. And he tells me, listen, I'm working in this treatment center in Florida called Solutions.
Wow.
And I was speaking to the owner and I told him a little bit about you and him and I feel that you would make a good counselor. Do you want a job?
Wow.
And I said to him, Steve, what do I know about being a counselor? He goes, no, listen, he goes, with your life experience and your recovery, we really think you could be a good counselor. We really want you to do this, and we'll put you we'll put you through school. I go, come on, school. I'm 60 years old. I'm going to go to school. He goes, well, think about it. So I discussed with my family. They thought about it, and they say I took a leap of faith, and I packed up my stuff. I got my cat Mikey, and him and I drove to Florida, and I went back to school, and I became a counselor. That was over 11 years ago, and so I was a counselor for a while, and then I got a lot. I got older, and it became a lot, and then I became a tech, and now I'm at Gulf Ocean, and I'm a tech, and it's a great treatment center I'm at, as Erica's going to tell you in a minute, because a lot of us that work here are in recovery ourselves, and to me, I think people that are in recovery make the best clinicians.
Well, there's no question, because you have total credibility with the patients in there.
Right.
I mean, you've lived
especially
it.
with these young kids, right? Especially with these young kids that are coming in, and they hear about my past, and they hear about the time I did and how I was raised, and the gangsters I knew, and then I'm clean, I'm working,
Listen,
it's a change.
Listen, your life story and what you're doing now, it just shows these people that you're dealing with that you can get out of it. You can live a decent life,
Without a doubt. Listen, it takes some work. It doesn't happen overnight. Definitely anybody could change. Listen, you got to want it. You know what I mean? You got to want it. And, and I feel today for these kids out there today, because today, the kids that are using out there today with this fentanyl stuff, it's like playing Russian roulette.
It certainly is.
Everything. I mean, when I was a kid, it was cut and dry. It was dope, coke, pot. I mean, people overdosed, but not like today. Today, every day. I mean, I buried so many clients in 11 years. It's terrible.
And
could tell you the same thing.
And we were talking about the other day about the Quaaludes. Listen, you never heard anybody overdosing on Quaaludes. You know that? I mean, never.
It's funny because I tease everybody today. I tease the kids today when they ask me about Quaaludes, because I loved Quaaludes.
Yeah.
I mean, they were so good. That's why they. I was just talking to Erica about them. She was laughing. I told her they were before your time. But drugs are different today. But I use that when I talk to kids. I tell them, when you use today, it's like playing Russian roulette.
It certainly is. Hey, Anthony, we have a caller on the line. Jim, welcome to Clean and Sober Radio.
Thank you very much for taking my call.
What's up?
I want to ask Anthony a question. I love this topic. It just brings back so many memories. But as many years ago, I was raised in Camden, so I had a little bit of knowledge of what was happening in Camden, Philadelphia, Atlantic City, regarding the mafia, whatnot. But it seems like those days that we used to hear about, and the people, whether it was John Gotti, Sammy the Bull, Paul Castellano, it seems like that generation is starting to diminish. Is there as much activity today as there was 30, 40 years ago, or is that population declining? What's your thoughts on that, Anthony, if I can ask?
It's definitely not the same as it was 30 or 40 years ago. I mean, today the mob is much smaller. I mean, don't forget, they're still making people. There's still kids out there getting made, but not like back in the day. The crimes are different. There's no more violence. They're not killing anybody anymore, that's for sure.
Yes.
The last time I saw my father alive in 1998, I was in Elmira State Penitentiary. My father came up to visit me, and he told me that the life was over because the two things that the mob had gone for them were gone. He said that everybody feared us and nobody cooperated. He said nobody fears us anymore and everybody's cooperating. And that's how it is today. I mean, it's not what it was. It's smaller. It's not what it was. The crimes, I don't know. I don't even know, like the way I earned a living, I wouldn't be able to do what I did today. I wouldn't be able to survive in today's world committing the crimes I committed when I was out there. So it's a whole different world out there now.
Hey, Jim. Jim.
Yes.
Is this the first time you're listening to the show?
I know it. No, I try to listen every Friday.
Really? All right.
But it's the first time I've called.
Yeah.
Because I love your guest and I love the topic.
Yeah. This guy Anthony, we've never actually met, but we've spoken many times before the show, and he's a real deal and a great guy and an inspiration to our whole community.
Unbelievable. Hey, next time he comes up here, drinks on me at the Latin Casino.
Well, we don't drink, brother.
We'll drink Coca-Cola.
Or if you have any Quaaludes, you'll let us know. Okay?
Yeah.
Hey, thanks, Jim.
Cokes all around. Not a problem.
Thanks, buddy. Okay. That's a good call. What was I just going to ask Anthony?
Well, I got a quick question.
Yeah, go
for
ahead,
you.
Mark.
And, committing these crimes, being in the mob, what was the closest you ever came to getting knocked off or whatever? Did you have any close calls where you thought you were going to get taken out? And what was that like?
Scary. I mean, yeah, I was around. I saw people get murdered. I mean, I was in bars where people got shot. I was in bars where my friends got shot, where murders were committed. I only had a gun pointed. I had a gun pointed in my head once, and I sort of talked the guy down. But yeah, I was around a lot of violence. I mean, I almost got stabbed one night in a club, but my friend saw the guy at the last minute and he hit him on the head with a ceramic ashtray. We had a big sit down over that. That was a big thing because they were involved with other wise guys, and we were in this club in Queens called the Monastery back in the day, and it was like a thing, their crew against our crew, and I almost got stabbed that night. That was kind of scary. Good thing this guy Sal saw it. Otherwise, I don't know. I might, that was a serious situation.
Anthony, did you know during your life of crime that it wasn't right? Or, I mean, I'm sure you had people that you knew that didn't do this stuff, and did you know it and you just couldn't get out of it, or you just didn't want to get out of it, or didn't know how to get out of it?
No, I just was how I was raised. What I did, it was just who I was.
Yeah.
It was my job. Like that's what we did. Like you go to work, and like Erica comes every day and goes to work.
Yeah.
That was my job. We thought we were right. Listen, my father used to tell me, don't ever feel sorry for the public. Not to get political or anything.
Yeah.
My father used to tell me, don't ever feel sorry for the public because they deserve everything they get for voting for these people.
Guess
That's
what? Your
he used to
dad
tell
is
me.
right.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to vote a communist in as the mayor of New York, but that's another story for another day. But that's what he used to tell me all the time. So but now this is where recovery kicks in. So now when I got clean, and that's a great question, because when I got clean and I started hitting the bottom with that lifestyle, because now I'm clean and I'm going to these 12-step meetings, and now I'm developing a conscience in spite of myself.
Right.
I'm getting uncomfortable in my own skin over what I'm doing, how I'm living.
Yeah.
And now I hit a bottom, but I didn't know how to get out. At that point now, I didn't know how to get out. And I had one foot in and I had one foot out. And then in 2005, when I got arrested again and I was facing life, it was over. That was like a God thing. You know what I mean? Now it was time to get out.
Anthony,
Just like
in 2005, you were arrested for the murder of your brother-in-law, weren't you?
Yes.
What was that about? You there?
Well, yeah.
We don't have to talk about. Listen.
No, that was about. We killed my brother-in-law.
Oh,
He
okay.
beat my mother up. He beat my mother up. Actually, he did it when I was in treatment.
Yeah.
And then when I got out of treatment, we went to my father and he okayed it, and he disappeared.
Right. Got it. Okay, that's cool. Listen, well, we're going to take a break, but I want to know from Erica sitting there listening to these stories, and I'm sure she's heard them before, what she thinks about hearing these stories. I mean, not every day you get to talk to a almost made man who is in recovery. And as a matter of fact, you never get to talk to somebody like that. You're incredible, and we'll be right back.
This is Clean and Sober Radio.
A cancer diagnosis can knock the wind out of you. The Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center at Abington Jefferson Health can help. Our brand new Asplund Cancer Pavilion brings you 86,000 square feet of cancer-fighting science for truly comprehensive care. Backed by the strength of an NCI-designated cancer center. Call 1-800-JEFF now. The Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center at Abington Jefferson Health. the power to outscience cancer.
What's happening? Brandon Novak here from Those Movies Jacks, or author of that addiction memoir, Dream Seller. Do me a favor and tune into Clean and Sober Radio with Gary Hendler.
610-632-8601. This is Clean and Sober Radio.
We're back. Welcome back to Clean and Sober Radio. I'm Gary Hendler along with Mark Sigmund. We're having a great discussion with Anthony Ruggiano Jr. Okay, Erica, you there?
I'm here, yes.
All right. So when you hear I don't know your background, but I'm sure it wasn't like Anthony's background. So when you hear these stories, it's almost like a contradiction to hear these stories and then to see how great that this guy Anthony's doing and giving back to everybody, you know?
Definitely. I mean, I think, the one thing that I've learned in my journey is that a lot of us that come into recovery, we come from all different walks of life.
Yep.
Right, but we share one thing in common, right, which is like the disease of addiction, right, the struggle of not wanting to use anymore and then finding ourselves continuously day in and day out using, getting high, doing the things that we don't want to do anymore and trying to find a solution, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that it's a beautiful thing that, whether it's like through treatment, right, treatment saved my life, got me in touch with like a 12-step program, and that's kind of like why I do what I do today, I think it's a huge deal for people who have walked that life and felt those feelings and dealt with like the bottoms and the struggles to be able to put our hands out and say, hey, I've been where you've been and this is how I got out, so let me help you.
Erica, what was your drug of choice?
Methamphetamine, I call it my drug of destruction because I gave it everything. It destroyed my life.
Yeah.
It took me 2 weeks from the first time I put that substance into my body at the age of 17 until I had a needle in my arm, and everything that I cared for in life. I used to be a very ambitious person. I was going to go to college to become a lawyer. And once I got high and once I put that substance into my body, that was the main thing that I cared about. I didn't care about graduating. I didn't care about all of the other things that I was involved in and where my life was headed. I just needed that next high, and anyone in my path that tried to stop me, they were against me. They weren't for me,
Yeah, it's cunning and powerful, isn't it?
It is, very much so.
For sure.
Yeah.
I don't know how old you are, Erica, but you sound like you're young. But
I'm
would
27.
How much?
And she's 27 and she's sober 8 years.
I got shoes older than you.
I got sober at 19. Yeah.
You know that?
What did you say?
He said he has shoes older than you.
So no, but seriously. So, and Anthony, you probably agree with me with this. I'm hoping. When we were coming up, Anthony, we didn't think about the lewds are going to kill us or the marijuana is going to kill us. But I imagine, Erica, you had to be careful because the stuff that you were doing could kill you.
Honestly, I think when I look back, I'm surprised the things that I did and the things that I got away with and how I thought that it was okay. I think that I was truthfully naive and ignorant and, yeah, very much so. I thought that I was invincible. I think just being young and not really seeing a lot of – I put myself in the chaos. I was raised in the church, raised the right way, I would say, and I decided to go find the chaos and go live that life.
Well, we're glad that you're in long-term recovery. Anthony, what would you say to somebody who was like thinking, man, I'm not – listen – I'm really digging my life now with all the gangster stuff, and I don't need rehab. And what would you say to these people? You lived it.
I would say they're fighting a losing battle. And a long time ago, somebody in recovery told me, "All that glitters isn't gold." And that's the truth. And that's what I would tell them. Listen, all that shiny stuff, all that glitters isn't gold. And it's all instant gratification. It's good in the beginning, and then it's not. And all that stuff goes away. And at the end of the day, you're alone. Yeah. It's just you.
Anthony, did you any guys that you work with in the old days? Anybody else get into recovery?
That's So that and that's a blessing because when I got clean, and I started making 12-step meetings. Guys would come and wise guys would call me and I would go and they would say, listen, could I talk to you? And I would say, yeah. And I would go meet them and they would ask me to take their daughter to a meeting or take their son to a meeting, because they knew I was in recovery. They knew I was clean because they knew how I was when I was using and how I was now, even though I was a criminal and I was still mobbed up and in the street, but I was clean. And that is, I was clean. And as long as, I always believed as long as I stood clean, the change would come. And so, yeah, and guys would come to meetings and, I have a friend, JJ, he's clean now, over 30 years.
Yeah.
When he got out of jail, he came the next day to my home group, and we were standing outside.
Wow. And
he asked me, he says to me, is it all right if we go to these meetings? Wow. And I said, yeah. I said, you want to save your life? Come to these meetings. And every year on his anniversary, he thanks me.
Wow, that's really powerful. I mean, I'm just listening to you, and I'm wondering, was it hard for you to be clean but still have one foot in the mob?
Not in the beginning. It wasn't hard in the beginning.
Right.
When I got arrested in '95,
yeah,
and I knew I was going back to prison, then it started to play on my head like,
yeah.
What am I doing? What am I doing? And then when I took the plea and I got the 2 to 4, and I was actually sent to Attica, which was a really bad prison because of who I was, because I was Fat Andy's son and I was in the mob, and I'm sitting in this cell. It's like I'm sitting in this cell, and the cell is full of cockroaches, and I'm sitting on the bed, and I had next to me a Narcotics Anonymous basic text.
Yep.
Right? And I picked it up and I just randomly opened it, and it opened up to the 12th step. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message.
Yeah.
And I realized I never went on that journey because of my lifestyle.
Yeah.
I never went on that spiritual journey. And in that moment, I realized that recovery was an inside-out job.
Yep.
That it wasn't about the money and the girls and the mob and getting made. It was an inside-out job. And when I got out of prison, my daughter told me I needed to get a username and an email, and I didn't know what she was talking about because when I was in jail, the internet blew up. Right. And I go, what are you talking about? An email? What do I need an email and a username for? And she told me, so my username I picked was Inside Out 89, and the reason why I picked that username was because I realized that recovery was an inside-out job, and I got clean in '89.
Well, that's very interesting. Wow.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Listen, this hour just flew by, first of all.
Yeah.
We want to ask, first of all, we want to thank you so much for coming on. Also you, Erica, we wish you the best. Anthony, would you come back on at some point? I'd love to get more story from you.
Anytime. And listen, before we go, if anybody's out there that's listening that needs help, get in touch with Erica and come see us.
All right, give the information again, Erica.
Go ahead, Erica.
Yeah, so we're Gulf Ocean Rehab Center located in Lauderdale by the Sea, across the street from the beach. We treat substance use as well as mental health, and you can give us a call at 1-844-468-1345. And if anybody wants help, call that number, and I'll answer and do whatever I can to help you.
Well, that is so fabulous. All right, guys, thanks so much for being on the show. And Anthony, I'll be in touch with you, I promise. And have a great, great weekend, guys. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Wow, what a nice...
It's amazing.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah, just the power of that, being stuck in a jail cell and opening a Narcotics Anonymous book. How amazing. And then having that moment of clarity that it's an inside-out job.
Yeah. I mean, you can tell he's a bright guy, but, we've had other people on the same situation. They grew up like this.
Yeah.
As he said, that was my job.
Well, I especially his father sitting him down and saying, hey, part of the job is going to jail.
Yeah.
Right? I mean.
Can you imagine your father saying that to you?
No, I can't. And this is like, talking to him is like Goodfellas and all that stuff.
Yeah.
This is old school mob.
Yeah.
I mean.
And to think, the dichotomy, I guess that's the word, I think, from where he came, where he's from to where he is now. It's like, I think of where I came from, it was like a cakewalk compared to this guy.
Yeah, and me too. A very big cakewalk.
A big cakewalk.
You know what I mean? But yeah, no, it's amazing. And it just shows, for people out there that are struggling, that you can and do get better.
Absolutely. Hey, I think it was a great show.
Absolutely.
Mark, thanks so much. Brad, TJ doing that behind the glass stuff, keeping us all together. Remember, if you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, help is available. Please call 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-HELP. For Clean and Sober Radio, I'm Gary Hendler.
I'm Mark Sigmund.
And we thank you each and every day for all the support that you give us. Have a great couple of days. We'll see you later.
I'd like to say thank you on behalf of the group and ourselves. I hope we pass the auditioning.
Hey, I just want to say also, Nolan Burchett, thanks for watching, brother. Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend.